documentary filmmaker, and has written a book called See No Stranger, and has started something called the Revolutionary Love Project. And the idea behind this is that, well, I'll just tell you what I think about it, which is that there is a revolution going on in our country. Things are changing very, very rapidly. We're seeing all of our systems and institutions struggling to figure out where to go next. COVID certainly exacerbated that because everything became so unfamiliar so quickly. And the question is what kind of revolution we're going to have. And what Valerie lifts up for us is a vision of a revolution that will bring more unity, more interconnectedness, more of our being able to see ourselves as being interdependent, and through that interdependence, finding a sense of safety and security and joy instead of the fear uh, and anger that we've seen so much of in our public square in recent years. So last week we did a little introduction. That's on YouTube and on our website if you'd like to watch. George and I did a little introduction to the whole um, uh, compass that the Revolutionary Love Project has developed to try to bring this revolution into reality. The point being that we need tools, we need new tools to be able to change our own hearts and be able to evaluate some of our own assumptions and some of the things that we've been taking as givens, and to then turn that into a new way of doing our work in our organizations, in our lives with our families, and ultimately to create a world in which we see the abundance instead of the scarcity. And so the first point on the compass we're going to be talking about today is wonder. And Valerie talks, one of the things that Valerie did that I found so inspiring was last year, uh, immediately following the Biden inauguration, President Biden's inauguration, she held a 10-day people's inauguration in which she did 10 days of interviews and workshops and all online to talk about how this work of creating a different reality in our world, a different country, a different global reality, belongs to all of us. Just because we have a new president in the White House does not mean that our world is going to be transformed. We need to be engaged in making the change, really being the change that we want to see in the world. I think that's one quote that comes to mind when I think about her work. Another one is, as a child of the 60s, we always, thought about President Kennedy's speech where he said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And I see this as a modern kind of spiritual approach to that. And so she says in her book, this work belongs to all of us. We have the ability to participate in this great love story. Imagine the stories we tell, the institutions we will build, and the lives we will lead when we affirm that every person is a person. Imagine the world we will birth when we see no stranger. And again, Valerie's book is called See No Stranger, and she begins with this idea of wonder and how to cultivate wonder. She talks about looking at anyone or anything and saying, you are a part of me I do not yet know. And she sees the practice of revolutionary love as beginning with being willing to wonder about people and things that we're unfamiliar with, that may seem uncomfortable, that may make us, even anxious or fearful, but to actually wonder about them, be curious about them, which is different than what we typically do, I know I do, is to make assumptions based on the things that we do know. And this approach really demands humility. It demands being willing to take a chance. Sometimes it's not so easy to be curious, but we have to, sort of acknowledge that if we don't want others to reduce us to their preconceived notions about who we are, then we have to resist that instinct to reduce others to our preconceived notions and assumptions. So I'm going to ask you all to take a minute, and we're gonna kind of do this work together today a bit, and think about something that you have seen or experienced or learned or encountered that has surprised you recently. And if you are willing to share that, unmute yourself, and until we have too many people trying to unmute at once, you don't have to raise hands.
This is Brian. I started a job as a tutor in the Dallas ISD at J.N. Irvin Elementary School down by the VA hospital. Last week I had to go to tutoring services, which is south and east of Fair Park. 11 Carrollton. Google Maps routed me through downtown, and I drove down Young Street. I hadn't been there for a long time, and I was surprised and not surprised to see the homeless people hanging out on Young Street by First Presbyterian Church.
And can I ask a follow-up question, Brian?
Absolutely.
How did that make you feel?
Sad that that's still going on, and concerned about those people. I know I had difficulty. I was in rehab when we had the freeze in February, and I had difficulty even though I was being cared for. I was affected by that, but not in the way that a lot of people were, but just my concern about the coming winter and why we don't treat those people better.
Thank you. Anybody else have something they want to share about something that surprised them recently?
I'm almost embarrassed to admit this. Oh, go ahead.
No, you start and I'll go next.
Okay. It's almost embarrassing to admit this because I don't feel like it should surprise me, but our church at Arapahoe United Methodist has started participating in some new ministries with foster care workers or foster care families and child protective. We're expanding those services. And we're also doing work, continued work with refugee services. And I was embarrassingly surprised when we invited people into that ministry to help, how many people signed on to have continued support for foster families and for refugee services, not just one time, but continuing over and over and over to help provide safety and keep families together. It was a very pleasant surprise, and I'm thrilled to say it. But it was a surprise how many people that we haven't even seen in the last 15, 16 months. Just, it's a surprise how many people are still out there caring.
Can I ask you a follow-up question, Kathy? How did you invite those people to be engaged in that way?
Well, some of it was through old term, direct marketing, in whatever way we can, but through social media, through our newsletters. Some of them I talked with personally. But I worked with someone in a previous appointment who I remembered this, that he said, you should never be surprised at how many people respond to an invitation, because some people are just waiting to be invited.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Sarah, you were next. Are you trying to unmute? You're muted. While we're waiting for Sarah, George, you want to share?
Sure, thanks. I had an unexpected bit of wonder yesterday, having lunch with someone who had previously been a friend and then from whom I had been estranged for 5 years. He had led the opposition in our church to our LGBTQ inclusion process. And I didn't know that we would ever share a table together or share a meal. And it was his initiative. And it actually came because he subscribed to Faith Commons and received this invitation and reached out to me to say, he wanted to reconnect. And it was way more pleasant than I expected, but the word wonder really fits in my mind here, that such a thing could have happened.
Thank you. Sarah, can you unmute, or do you want to? When you're ready, please do. Anybody else right now?
Can you figure out? Yeah. So, well, I don't know that much surprises me. So I like that George picked the word wonder. I want to substitute different words like startle or disappoint or shock, so I like wonder, because it's like the positive and the negative connotations of surprise. So I'm trying to think about that. But when Brian was talking about the unhoused population, which I'm frequently in contact with my work. And so they're very much a part of my daily life, people in the unhoused community. But I was startled the other day, last week. I work in a church building, and there was a man walking through the parking lot, which is not uncommon. And he started to pull his pants down, which startled me. And I was in my car, I kept driving. And because normally I will talk to people and, chat with them and, we interact. But I was like, I don't think I want to interact with somebody that is pulling his pants down. And I went and parked, and then I was just kind of like trying to look in my mirror, and he had just gotten completely naked in the middle of the parking lot and was bathing himself. And that was very startling to me. So I was just thinking about what Brian had said earlier, about that population and of people, and how we see each other and interact with each other is sometimes surprising, if not startling.
Right. And so, Maria, did you want to say something? I didn't know if you were just giving a thumbs up or if you wanted to say something. You're muted.
Thank you. I can say something. So for me, also the sense of wonder. Yesterday, I was working at my computer, and then I looked up and saw the light outside. The sunset was just amazing. And so I jumped up and went outside and went around the block just to see the sunset. And a few days ago, we had a conference on spiritual ecology at our museum in Taiwan. Of course, from here, it's via Zoom, but Mary Evelyn Tucker of the Yale School of Forestry was the main speaker, and she spoke about spiritual ecology or eco-spirituality, the appreciation for the sacred universe out of which this earth developed. And then it also speaks about the sense of community, that we are all interconnected. And it was also connected to eco-justice. So our interconnectedness and to do justice to this universe and also to each other, it was beautifully woven, and I felt very energized by that. And but another sense of wonder is I also take care of 2 foster children, and my friend Susan, who's here for the first time, helps me with that also. And we took them out to the movies, and the little boy who's 5 years old, the girl is 8 years old, got bored with the movie and he went outside. And he has this sense of wonder, just picking up pebbles and stones. And later on, when the 8-year-old sister joined, we went around the lake and they picked up feathers, and they were so excited about the things of the universe. But what's a wonder to me is these are underprivileged children. And when we bought them some popcorn, the little boy immediately took some out and made sure that each of us got something from him popcorn. And he's used to doing such things. And today I read about their schools, and it's in Irving, and it's underachieving and all of that. So I have great worries about these children. But to see their heart, this goodness that comes from their heart, and this joy of this sense of joy and wonder, they would also jump up and look at the sunset and all these things. And sometimes we lose that as adults. So I think that sense of wonder is also implicated in what Valerie says, just to look around us and realize the beauty and the wonder of our existence here on Earth.
Yes, exactly. And, she talks a lot about the fact that we're all born with that sense of wonder, and as children we have it, and then it slowly gets shut down. And both in terms of the feel-good examples that people gave and the disconcerting examples people gave of feeling wonder, in both cases, my question is, what did that stir within you? Because what Valerie's challenge to us really in this first compass point of wonder is to be curious about how we are reflected in the people and the things that we see around us. So even though a man getting naked in the middle of a parking lot may seem like the most alien thing to us in the world, the most strange and scary thing in the world, her challenge to us is, can we identify with something in that person, something that's motivating that behavior, that we can find relationship, that we can relate to. So let's just do that as a thought experiment. I mean, that was the kind of the most shocking one, right? So if you think about that experience that Sarah had, what might give you a sense of connection to a person getting naked in a parking lot?
Are you asking me or are you asking everyone?
I'm asking everyone.
Okay.
But if you have an answer.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I certainly reflected on it and just, this guy was, it was like a self-care bathing kind of thing. So I think that's what was so unusual about it, that oftentimes if you see people, sometimes they're high or, engaged in, I'm going to say, a sexual activity. If you happen to see people, which I don't see this all the time, but I don't think I'd seen somebody in Dallas in the middle of a parking lot doing that. And so, but it was making me think about just, I mean, it was like, it's a human body. It's a beautiful thing. And, we're divine creations. And so, I mean, I was just thinking about all of those things, and those, obviously it struck something in me to see this guy there. And I was thinking about, this, just the divine creation that each of us is. And, he's no different than any of us in that respect.
Yeah, and what I'm thinking about is how often I've noticed myself doing things that I never thought I would do, either for self-care or for perceived self-care, maybe. Again, because so many things that I took for granted, and also things that gave my life stability and structure and rhythm, have changed. Just the difference in my, it's just different. And I see different things in the world than I saw before, because I'm doing different things than I did before.
All of that struck in me a sense that he was only doing what each and all of us do on a regular basis, but he didn't have the privacy that we all have, and that we all deserve, to be able to do that very natural thing, to take care of himself hygienically in a way that protected his dignity socially. And that therefore there's enormous work for us to be able to do, to see to it that that kind of dignity is promoted, preserved, and that people like that don't have to be in the middle of a parking lot doing so.
I do think that sometimes, I know a lot of you, and I know that a lot of you are involved in organizations that really try to help other people. And that is our instinct. That's our natural instinct. I think what this is asking us to do is actually relate to those experiences in a way that we don't often give ourselves permission to do. And that's where that aspect of wonder that she's talking about comes from. It's a real sense of humility that how would we behave if we didn't have the privileges that we have? Or, how do we behave when we're in situations when our privilege doesn't help us? Maria.
Nancy, this is Kyle. Just a quick comment, similar to George's, but at Thanksgiving Square, we frequently have people bathing in the fountains and doing things that are, evoke an emotion in us. And a couple of things that occur to me. One is, first, I'm trying to be in touch with what those emotions are. I'm angry generally, but should I be angry? Should I feel compassionate? Should I feel, what are the emotions I should feel when I encounter that? Certainly some concern about the safety and well-being of those kinds of behaviors, but it occurs to me too, that what's top of mind to me are my needs. My need is for this person not to be doing this here at Thanksgiving Square, and that's I always reflect on how I want him to go do that someplace else, but where else? Where's the someplace else? So how do you offer an alternative to the bad choice that the person is making? So those kind of things run through my mind as I try to deal with that here. Where is it okay for this person to bathe? Where is it okay for this person to be? It's one thing to say, my friend Darren Babcock frequently says, it's one thing to tell people to quit doing what they're doing that disturbs you, but you got to tell them what to start doing. Mm-hmm. And if we don't tell them how to start doing something that's more acceptable, then we really haven't offered them much of an option, other than to kind of continue to do it, but under the darkness or while we're not present or something.
Thanks. Maria, did you want
Yeah.
to?
I think my comment on Sarah's story is when I first heard the beginning, I had like this feeling in the pit of my stomach, because when I was a young student or a schoolgirl, I was traumatized by an exhibitionist who took off his clothes in the wrong place and at the wrong time. And that only stopped when we got the police involved. So Sarah's reaction then, I thought, has to come from a place that is already free of fear. And sometimes we have fear in such situations where we could not look at the human being, but where we try to put up a wall and run and protect ourselves. So then I think the question is, how can we really come to this place of fearlessness? I think now, later when I was adult and already in Kyoto, I encountered another exhibitionist, and I felt free enough to tell the person not to do that because it scares young women like me. But as a girl, I was running. So we need a certain place of having no fear when we want to embrace the other.
Right, and we're coming to the end of our time, so I'm going to finish up with another quote from Valerie and just say that, you know, wonder is an antidote to fear, because if we can turn our fear or our concern or our limited ability, you know, our boundaries into curiosity about what is happening with this person and identify with it, then we will come at our solutions from a very different place. And often those solutions, you know, we want to make general solutions, but just as we don't want to be generalized into categories, we need to, again, try to look at others as individuals and as entities that are motivated by their own special, unique set of circumstances. So what she says in her first chapter about wonder is that the failure to wonder is the beginning of violence. Once people stop wondering about others, once they no longer see others as a part of them, they disable their instinct for empathy. And once they lose empathy, they can do anything to them or allow anything to be done to them. Entire institutions are built to preserve the interests of one group of people over another, and those depend on this failure of imagination. So this first chapter, this first point on the compass, which is about wonder, is really also about creativity, imagination, and our ability to start really seeing new potential in the world as again, we come back to the fact that our institutions are not sufficient to deal with the problems of our current world. We need new creative thinking, but that also is scary because it's unfamiliar to us. And so this ability to cultivate our curiosity, which is often hard because we are afraid to ask questions. We don't want to insult other people. We don't want to put ourselves into a position where we have to defend our own position or choices. And so we have to figure out ways of communicating that. And this is a very short introduction to wonder, but as we proceed in this work with Valerie and after Valerie comes and goes, then we want to continue to try to cultivate this in a way that can foster that imagination and creativity that we so desperately need. So that's the end of our formal time together today, but people are welcome to stay on for a few more minutes if you have time to chat or want to share anything.
Thank you so much for everyone joining us. I just want to say thanks to Nancy for organizing this and hosting week by week. And it's a delight to visit with people of like mind who are working in the same direction. So thank you so much.
Hi, this is Sadia. I caught some of the session today. I wanted to just drop in and kind of see how this conversation works. Thank you so much, Nancy and Faith Commons for organizing this. I'm looking forward to participating more in the future and also bringing on some more friends because I think this is a beautiful space that you've created. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'm also in the thick of my first semester of seminary school finals and papers. So please send good vibes my way. So,
Great. Where are you going to school?
it's the University or Chicago Theological Seminary.
Oh, great.
So I'm
Yeah.
virtually.
Right, UCC.
Actually,
Yes.
we have another guest coming to Faith Commons in March from UCC. That's Rachel Mikva. Are you familiar with her?
No, so I think Chicago Theological Seminary, CTS, is different than UCC. So I'm not familiar with her. Or maybe I'm a freshman, so maybe I'm
Okay.
clueless. I don't know.
She's in the Interfaith Seminary.
Okay, great. No, I'll definitely look her up though. That's great to know.
Yeah, and she'll be here March 3rd through 6th. If anybody has any questions, next week's topic will be grieving. That's the next point on the compass. And again, when we get curious, we have to be willing to give up some of our narratives that we've held on to, and that involves grief and that involves loss. So that'll be part of next week's conversation.
Have a great week, everyone.
Thank you all.
And here we are.